All right, now I've officially started recording. So we'll do one more. That's the last loop, so that it's part of the recording. So it's already there. We're good, and we'll get going. So for everybody who's there, well, welcome. This will be our next 21 recap. Um, we'll cover infrastructure, security, networking, app mod, AIML, and uh, database analytics. So we'll depending on time, we're going to try to be nice. Be able to capture question like while we're doing it. So you can use like Archie mentioned the Q&A section in the chat, and we'll be able to answer there. And like I mentioned, if we're unable to answer, we'll just go back to actually just I'm switching decks, so that's why I'm quitting the share part. We'll just answer in the Slack channel that we have. So please register. Don't be shy. So I'll yeah, that's basically it. So let's actually get going. I said noon sharp. It's noon. Let's go. I'm gonna share my screen, and we can actually get going. So let me know if it's okay. Then I'll present. All right. Good to go. So excellent. Let's get going. So hi everyone. Thanks for joining us for this Google Next 21 recap from the GDG Cloud Montreal and Ottawa team. I would well, they're going to intro themselves in their section, but just want to right off the bat thank everybody who joined on the Google side, like my 3 Googler friends, old friend and new friends, to cover those topics with us for our new event. So yeah, we'll cover infrastructure, networking, security, AIML, data and analytics. Everything that was presented, talked about, that we deemed worthy of covering a bit more. And if there's anything, like I said, feel free to ask questions in the Q&A. If we can't answer to you right now, we'll answer to you in the Slack channel, which is why I invite you to actually join the conversation there also. So, well, I've just mentioned what we're going to cover. I can really right now skip over this one. And our speakers, I'll let each of them intro them when they hit their section, but this is your panel. Well, myself, Stacy, we all know him from SADA, as a pre-sale cloud engineer. We'll have Archie, which is our hybrid specialist from Google. We'll have Adrina, who joined us also as an AML and AI specialist, another Googler, and Rogerio for the data as a data platform specialist. So again, thanks for joining us. It's really awesome. And personally, thanks Archie for being able to, get Rogerio and Adrina on board. It was a tight and really like last minute, like let's get everybody together. We're able to do it. Awesome. I love that.
Yeah,
So
Stacey, I have a shameless plug. So like we actually all representing one team at Google, which is a specialist team that is global across Canada. So we have people who are working from different parts of Canada in our team, and we just like focus on a specific area. So like Roger is data specialist, Adrina is AI and ML, and I'm an AppMod. And I just want to tell that our team is growing. So if you're interested to join Google as a specialist, please hit any of us, and we'll be happy to tell like what we're doing day to day, and and hopefully help you to get into the to the interview process, just so like skip some of the steps which are sometimes difficult. If you're passionate, of course, about GCP, and if you're specialist, you definitely have good chances to join our team.
cool. Okay, now I'll do a shameless plug there. And if you're scared of interviewing with Google and you're passionate about GCP, just ping me on LinkedIn, and then you can join SADA. Here you go. Both shameless plug done. We're done. Next. All right. So yeah, so I'm going to cover the infrastructure, networking, and security part. There's a lot in there, and I usually talk a lot, so I'll try to restrain myself and go over as quickly, but precisely as I can. If I talk too fast, you can play me back at 0.5x on YouTube. later on, no problem. So during Next 21, a lot of infrastructure, security, networking things were announced. Some of them are mixed between like app mod and infrastructure. One of them, the big one for my taste, is Google Distributed Cloud. So basically, just think about it of GCP everywhere. If you're a network operator, if you want to be close to Google's network, if you want GCP within your data center, if you want GCP near your point of sales or anything, those are the elements that Google Distributed Cloud are bringing. Of course, it's super high, meaning like you're bringing like the entire cloud with you in your pocket and you're dropping it somewhere. It's not really the idea, but the connecting tissue of all this element is Anthos, and I'll let Archie do his thing with Anthos, not a problem. He'll cover that more in details in his section. But that's the idea of Google Distributed Cloud. So, and I'll just go in detail quickly around like those vertical, meaning like the network edge. Well, we know Google's network is like really big, and they are really a lot of edge location that you can actually hit around the world. So the idea of distributed cloud at the network edge is that where you're able to deploy where you're close to Google's network. So if you are able to meet them in a location in particular, you'll be able to leverage this. If you're an operator, like okay, if you're like I don't know, like we're in Canada, so if you're like a TELUS or like and you want to be able to offer like 5G services, you want to be able to leverage those services from a CSP, then Operator Edge actually brings you this. Again, keeping in mind that all of this has some Antos magic in the back. The way to make things portable, you'll be able to bring it to the edge. And if we're thinking more like classic data center and what's going on in that area with Google Distributed Cloud, well, the customer edge is really like the retail stores, factories, and floors and branch offices where you drop those, let's call it pods of GCP. So you can hook up. Good example of that, Major League Baseball is kind of fits in the customer edge with Antos, where they actually able to drop. They leverage like Antos in every stadium. So that's a good kind of story for customer edge and customer data center. Well, it's basically you bring the GCP piece, the distributed cloud within your data center, because maybe you have like some really specific restriction in terms of regulation, security, and this item actually will help you achieve those regulation, be able to keep like IPA or PCI stuff that you really need, and for some reason are not able to be hosted on GCP itself, within Google's infrastructure. So you'll leverage that with this piece on with Google Distributed Cloud. So that's covering this. I know it's a lot. Again, this is recap. So keep that in mind and keep those questions coming. Like if there's anything, feel free. If you want to join the Slack piece and post in there, be our guest. It's really not a problem. It's our pleasure to answer your questions when we can. So going down the path of like more announcement and kind of going again like on the Antos track. I don't want to steal your thunder, Archie. So there's Antos MultiCloud API that was announced. So basically, putting it simple and without reading the slides, when you play with Antos, there's a piece, or like in the like GKE on-prem or every other versions of the evolution of what Antos is, there's always a piece for connecting. So it's the connect gateway. So the idea is that you leverage GCP as your single pane of glass, and you'll be able through Antos MultiCloud API and the Connect Gateway, you're able to discover your clusters, connect to clusters that are like on-prem or on AWS or on Azure, and you're able to see everything in one space, your space being GCP. You can see your connected cluster and you can authorize your clusters. Maybe you have like 5 clusters on Azure, you want to apply the same policies on it. You're able to group them into a fleet and then apply policies on fleet. So it's actually giving you great control over your clusters from a single point, which you're doing in the GCP dashboard, and you're actually leveraging wherever your clusters are running. Of course, those clusters are Anthos clusters, right? So
Stacy, I just want
yeah,
to add a few more cents
sure.
here. Like, actually, the Antos MultiCloud API was supporting deployment of GKE on AWS for a while, but like pretty much the main announcement for this for the Google Next 21 was that now we're supporting also GKE cluster running on Azure. So essentially, if you decide to run GKE on those cloud providers and you like them to be running as Antos, and for the reason of just Stacy mentioned, you want to kind of centralize all the configuration policies and single pane of glass, your CI/CDs. So you have those destinations available for you right now to use.
Cool. Right. Thanks. Yeah. No, I was thinking of doing a bad joke, or if you're running a Windows container on Azure, do you get a blue screen of death? Is that a thing? We don't know. So anyway, so that's gonna be another topic. All right. Thanks, Archie, for the clarification. Going down again on the Anthos track, just to cover those and quickly, it's basically Anthos for VMs, which announced is basically it's allowing you to bring a classic VM straight into Kubernetes without making it a container. It's leveraging KubeVirt, which is an open source standard for Kubernetes itself. So again, Google leveraging open source to bring things straight within GCP, and Anthos in particular, so which is awesome. So it's not proprietary, so it is a standard. So they're just following it, and it just brings you. So maybe there's some workloads that they are not ready to be transform into a container. Say, well, I would love to have this in my Anthos control plane. The only way I can do that, I just don't want to bring a VM over just for the sake of bringing a VM over. I want it under my same the control of everything. So Anthos for VM allows you to do that, and while not have to refactor your VM at all. So it's a great tool. It's also if I'm thinking about like telcos, there's are like VNFs that sometimes are like monolith. Archie and I are like both ex Ericsson, so VNFs are something we're familiar with. But it's a perfect move for that. So okay, well this thing is not ready to be containerized, but we really want to move it under Anthos. So Anthos for VM is a great way of doing that. It also can hook up to vCenter. So I strongly urge you to have a look if you're playing with Anthos and you say, hey, I would like to bring a VM over and just have it run as a VM. Within the mix of containers, you're able to do that. Also, the beauty of it, and this is going to be the last thing I said on this slide, is that everything that's a VM itself, well, you can actually like gate them. Just think about, say, oh, well, if those are VMs and not containers, I don't want like things to go like super weird. Then you're able to actually like have those VMs on dedicated nodes that are like assigned for this, so you don't have to worry about anything. So it's a great evolution of having Anthos slash GKE or Kubernetes being able to be your overall scheduler and viewer of everything. So that's and I'm done with Anthos, like Archie, I promise. So next one is the next one is Spot VM. Basically, Spot VM, just keep it simple and kind of recuperate some time. There was a thing, still a thing called preemptible VMs. Just see Spot VMs as your like new preemptible. So you still have their cost reduction. You're still they still not bound to an SLA because you can't really like migrate them. They're not part of a free tier. They're just dirt cheap. So depending on what you want to run, like stuff that was say, oh, I can like do batch processing, is gonna die, start over, it's not a problem. Those instances are perfect for that. So just keep in mind, and that was already the case, like depending on like how many VMs are killed on the GCP side when you use preemptible. But original preemptible lifetime 24 hours, but VMs you could actually go longer. because basically spots VM are like what's left of compute resources, like let's say in Montreal data center. So okay, from there you take your thing, boom, say okay, well, like we have like X amount of compute, we share it with the world. Then you can grab it for cheap and run your thing. So that's what preemptible and now spot VMs are. So if you have stuff that can actually die fast and start over, like batch processing, like spot VMs are really nice for that. Moving on the cool infrastructure stuff, there's the TAA T2D VMs. The TAA VMs were already announced, I think in, well, next 20, if I'm not mistaken, initially. So it's based on the AMD EPIC processor. So it's basically, I call it magic because it's like we all like, if you do Raspberry Pi or whatever, like you play with ARM and it's, you think about this, but think about the ARM coolness in terms of like, hey, it's like consume low power consumption, can give you performance. The big difference is that with the AMD EPIC processor architecture, that we're leveraging x86 architecture. We don't have to refactor anything. So the stuff that's running, it's going to run, just going to run cheaper. Also, this little friend there is going to be GKE friendly. So if you want low cost GKE. The TAA T2D VMs are going to be really nice. Of course, have to make sure it's available in the region you want to do it. So if you are bound to Canada, you have to check that it's in Toronto and Montreal. But that's the T2D piece that's going on. So just moving on. That's like this one. I like it. It has, well, it's not that it has nothing to do with technology, far from it. That we're talking about consuming new resources, like new powerful stuff. Say, okay, but what about my carbon footprint? So if you have if you're just thinking what's going on out there, the carbon footprint is something that's now in your GCP console, and actually you're able to see like how much, and actually like the screen capture there, that's from my own personal org. So I ran some stuff and then say, okay, well, I was doing some stuff, and then like my carbon emission went up because I did a bunch of tests and I just let it running for nothing. So you're actually able to see who's consuming what, and then if you want to be more conscious about your consumption and actually what you're, of course, if you consume less because you're better at controlling what's rogue in your environment, like everybody wins. Like cost-wise, you're winning as a customer, and while carbon footprint wise, we're good. So have a look at the carbon footprint piece. It's also available through Active Assist, like the recommender. So you'll see actually VMs that are doing nothing, and actually how much CO2 emission you can remove if you're actually shutting those down. So have an eye on this one. It's really interesting. So, ooh, yeah, I made a little animation. Just tell me I'm just switching section, and it's really super fast. I'm going to networking, and it's just one slide. There was a few announcements, but it's not as big as infrastructure or AppMod or AIML. So there was just a few, and there's a few little things I just wanted to point out on networking. One of them is the Cloud Armor edge security policy. So basically, you're able to do policies on stuff that's, well, at the edge. So on the CDN side and cloud storage, so you're able to actually put security policies on those elements in Cloud Armor. So that's a nice little addition. On the IDS side, so like intrusion detection service, well, there's an offering. Like Cloud IDS is there on GCP in the network services, and it's something that's leveraging Palo Alto technologies. So really, you have a full-fledged IDS built into the console. So if you're familiar with leveraging other types of IDS, you want something that's baked in that leverages Palo Alto Networks technology. IDS is also a great offer. Our friend CloudNet, where you want to limit egress access to the internet. You can actually now do destination-based NAT rules and dynamic port allocation. So basically, if you actually know what you're gonna hit, and it's natted again, then you're able actually to put it in there. And dynamic port allocations that you're able actually to specify some specific ranges for the NAT, which all those things were not available before, which is a great addition to Cloud NAT. And last thing on cloud firewalls, like if you're using cloud firewalls, there's a section called Firewall Insights that gives you like what's going on. But now actually you're able to see the hierarchy of those rules. Like, okay, rules A override rules B, then you actually have the full view of this inside the networking, which is nice to get visibility of like, hey, what's going on in my things. Like, and why this rule is so permissive. Yeah, well, it's like by default it's not, but you're actually having something else that's messing up uh, your entire place. So that's networking. Security, I usually, that has nothing to do with GCP, but I just found there's some cool stuff. So I'm going to go fast. It's collaboration. So if you're using Google Workspace, fine. It's not a pitch to go on Workspace. It's just to tell you there's a lot of things going on security, like encryption, Google Drive labels for sensitive files, but also the one why I included it is the DLP for GChat. So DLP is something we have in GCP, so data loss prevention. So in Google Chat, basically, well, it leverages the DLP, but it's like if you're actually paste sensitive information, the DLP will actually kick in. So it's a really neat feature for chat. So I just wanted to state that out. I'm going to spend too much time on collaboration, but I found it was really for security and everything we do, working remote, doing a lot of stuff. Somebody asks you for something, you paste information, and that it contains PII. Well, you know, if those features are turned on, then actually, like, you just save yourself a oopsie. I was not supposed to paste my social security number in that chat window. All right. Security-wise, also there's a new action team that was put in place by Google, Cybersecurity Action Team, so GCAT, which is like super cool name. Uh, so, so basically, you get see this team as a group of experts around compliance, advisory, threat detection, intelligence, and engineering around solution that can be built together for Google. And other thing is cybersecurity action team. It's not just this GCAT for the Google piece, but I mean, like, it's the scope is wider than just what happens within GCP. So for all those who are like super interested in security, uh, take the time to go look at the GCAT framework. The URL, it's a bit small, but you can see it better after that in the recording. Feel free to drop by and look at what this new team is working at Google, and especially thinking about financial institution can leverage the power of that team to move themselves forward in their digital migration. Moving forward and in the security piece, so ubiquitous data encryption. So I'm happy I said it without without stuttering. This one is basically it's end-to-end encryption from everything that's happening within GCP. So everything that you send to the cloud that can leverage external key management and also stuff that's running in confidential VMs. All those elements are part of ubiquitous data encryption. So just see it as it's an end-to-end solution for everything that's encryption within GCP. Important thing we've mentioned a lot. We have encryption in flight and at rest within GCP. One of those elements that are mentioned here, confidential VM environment. So confidential VM does some magic that I'll need some security guy to explain, where actually stuff that's in memory is actually encrypted and processed. So this is like, it's really awesome. So that's part of the entire end-to-end encryption solution for Google. So I wanted to state that out with the data encryption piece here. Of course, super high level. Feel free to ask questions or go visit the security piece. Sticking to DLP, who's coming back for a third time in our discussion. The automatic DLP is something that was that was announced and something that was slowly being put in place. Basically, you can do data loss prevention within GCP. We all know that. We can set it up. Automatic DLP, if you're actually leveraging BigQuery, is really nice because you're actually able to do your thing, saying like, okay, well, at the org level, Mr. DLP, please look at my stuff, and they just like keep on running. You're also able to do it at the folder level. You can get some outputs in BigQuery also to get those reports going. So this is something really interesting where it's kind of like no hands, and it's actually the LP is working. So really super interesting. So have a look. It is in preview, so worst comes to worst, you just have to fill in like where and why, and within a day you get usually invited. I know I did with my own org, and I'm just like me on my org, so it's really not a problem. So it's not that bad. So then that was the infra security and networking as fast as I could. So I'll pass it on to Archie
Thanks,
on
Stacey.
the APMA piece.
Hey Archie,
Can I share my screen?
Before we begin, very quickly, Archie, I think the Q&A tab is still disabled. I believe we have to start it.
Oh, okay. I started it. Yeah, I started. Thank you so much. So now you can drop the questions. I'm just looking at, there's no questions like what's going on. Actually, the Q&A tab was disabled, so now it should be fine. I just enabled it. Okay, Stacey, I want to share the screen, but the button is still grayed out, so I need to share it.
Drive the slides, or you
no, you just need to disable, like just stop sharing. I'll start sharing, and then hopefully somebody will drop the questions.
Okay, you can share on your side.
Yeah, so please monitor the Q&A box now. It should be.
We'll do that.
And yeah, thanks, Stacey. So my name is Archie. As you know, I used to be organizer of this meetup. Now I'm just like trying to be a friendly person and help with speakers, and continue to build the community in Montreal and Ottawa. And thanks everyone for joining. So I'll be covering the space for AppMod, which is essentially Anthos, GKE, serverless platforms like Cloudrun and Cloud Functions. And we also have exciting announcement around DevOps, which is cloud deploy and cloud build. So please stick around. And I think we're keeping the most interesting at the end, things like machine learning and AI and data. But I will definitely, excited to be here and share the news about application modernization piece. So the good news, like we have next section is around Anthos. The good news is Stacey already covered all the announcements for me. I just want to kind of recap that essentially Anthos is a Google Cloud open platform for application modernization that provides you flexibility to run your applications anywhere. And if you look at the screen now, you can run Anthos on Edge thanks to Google Distributed Cloud announcement that Stacey mentioned. You can run Anthos on bare metal. You can run Anthos on your VMware on-premises, Google Cloud, and then thanks to Antos MultiCloud API that Stacey also announced and mentioned, you can now deploy your GKE cluster on Amazon. You can deploy your GKE cluster on Azure, and we also have support for attached clusters. So if you want to, attach your existing EKS or AKS or OpenShift clusters to Anthos to have single pane of glass, you can also do that. And then finally, we have isolated mode. This is for like pretty much for environments like in China or where there's no access to internet. So you can also have it in isolated mode. So all of this, pretty much we can call GKE anywhere now, similar to what Amazon called EKS anywhere. But you can essentially deploy GKE on every single place. And then you can enable things like service mesh. You can enable policies. You can enable GitOps. And all the nice functionalities like serverless with Anthos. And you can apply those on your containers solution, which is like running on GKE. But as Stacey mentioned, we're now also supporting Anthos for VMs. So you can apply those policies and service mesh and everything to the VMs as well, which is pretty cool because data center is still full of VMs. And if you get an Anthos, you want to also leverage your VM deployments. So thanks, Stacey, for covering the hardest part for me. I will go straight to the next announcement around GKE. And GKE is Google Kubernetes Engine. I think one of the most popular, I'm probably biased because I love Kubernetes, but it's probably one of the most popular solutions on Google Cloud. And we see a lot of companies joining Google because of Google Kubernetes Engine. And we actually have two modes of operation for GKE. One is called GKE Standard, and the new one, which has been announced recently, called GDG Autopilot. So I'll have a few announcements around that, and I hope you'll be very excited as well, because we have really, really cool stuff. First announcement is around GDG Autopilot. So GDG Autopilot is the mode where you essentially, with GDG standard, your control plane of Kubernetes is managed. But with GDG Autopilot, your VMs, your nodes on Kubernetes is also fully managed. So you just have Kubernetes API and you can deploy your application, and you don't care about any infrastructure. So that's great. But our customers was complaining that GDG Autopilot is great for many use cases, like and it's secure, and it's cheaper in the sense that it can schedule perfectly the workloads per VMs. So it provides great sizing capabilities. The problem with Autopilot essentially was that it has some limitations. So things like you cannot run mutating webhooks, things like OPA Gatekeeper, and then some other things. So with the announcements around Google Next, we actually adding support for OPA Gatekeeper. You can do the sys trace and mutating webhooks. I'm hoping the next announcement will be around service mesh Istio. So once you can run Istio on Autopilot, so that would be fantastic, and pretty much probably enable all the rest use cases that are right now blocked for our customers. So that was Autopilot. Going next, pretty great announcement for enterprises that love to do backups and restores in a traditional manner. Google providing a backup for GKE, which is a managed solution to protect your Kubernetes cluster, namespaces, and application resources. So you can essentially create backup policy for your clusters that runs pretty much everywhere with Anthos today, and you can back up your application, both stateless and stateful. And then in case of disaster recovery, if you want to recreate them, or maybe you want to create DR clusters and whatnot, you'll be able to use things like backup for GKE for these purposes, and you don't have to install any software. I just came back from KubeCon. I saw a few more companies that is offering this service, like Trilio, and I think I forgot the name, but like there are solutions out there, but this solution essentially is managed, and you can apply for your Antos clusters and for your GKE clusters. Next one, actually, Stacy already covered, which is TAA VMs. So TAA VMs now supported for GKE, and lets you, save money and performance, because essentially it's much more performant, and you basically paying much less compared to other cloud providers for the same size of the VM, because essentially your TAA VMs are much more faster and provides better performance. Next up, GKE now supports Spot VMs, which Stacy just covered, and essentially, GKE Spot VM support. You can have like your workloads laugh on face of disruptions. Essentially, if you pretty much can be taken down anytime with the Spot VMs, but you're paying just a fraction of the price compared to the normal VM. So if you really like to live on the bleeding edge, please try it. But it could be sometimes dangerous. But obviously, if you're doing CI/CD, for example, and some other workloads that are like batching that really don't really care about disruption, I think this is a great way to save money, especially in the time of COVID, where companies trying to save as much as possible.
Yeah. But don't put MongoDB in there, no.
No. I think the most exciting announcement for me, at least, is managed service for Prometheus (GMP). I'm a CNCF ambassador, so having native Prometheus running on Google Cloud, I think this is really, really cool. Obviously, you probably heard Amazon had similar solution right now. So we also have the managed service for Prometheus, and essentially it's a drop-in replacement for your Prometheus and Thanos. Thanos is a multi-tenant Prometheus cluster. Of course, when you run, you can easily deploy Prometheus with the Helm chart. You can manage it easily for the small deployment, but if you have many Prometheus clusters running everywhere, manage them at scale is very, very hard. So that's where Google Prometheus Engine will come in place, and it takes advantage of Monarch Data Store, which is Google's Planet Scale in-memory time series database. So essentially, you have a fast time series database that is managed for you, and you can continue to use your favorite PromQL to create your Grafana dashboards, making queries, making alerts, recording rules and whatnot. And most importantly, it's not locking solution. So it's a Prometheus, and all your work that you can do with the Prometheus, Google Prometheus Engine can be run anywhere in different places. So it's fantastic news for everyone who loves Prometheus. And of course, looking forward to work with the customers and help them to use that service. For those who still love Stackdriver, we have a cloud monitoring solution which is native to Google Cloud. It's a great solution, I think, for operations team to get all the metrics from your infrastructure, like your VMs, your GKE clusters. I think it's great. But one of the places where it was lacking support, it was a workload metrics, right? So you have your application running on GKE cluster. How I can use Stackdriver or cloud monitoring to get those. So now we have actually support for workload metrics. We have a special agent that's running on GKE, and it will be able to collect those workload metrics or custom metrics from your application and make it available on cloud monitoring. Again, cloud monitoring or Stackdriver, or if you want to use Prometheus, you have obviously options here. So it's great that we're providing so many different capabilities and options for you to run. I had actually a lot of questions around Anthos, and because Anthos has some nice features like Anthos config management to essentially do your GitOps for configurations and applications, and you can do like policies. With Anthos, you can do things like service mesh, which is like managed Istio, not managed, but like Istio enterprise from Google. So a lot of customers asking, what if I want to use those Anthos features on Google Cloud on GKE? Do I need to buy a license for that? And the good news is it's not. And I have the next two announcement. So the Anthos config management now available on GCP GKE, and it's hosted. So if you actually you can see it here. If I go to the UI of GKE cluster, we have a config management, and you can easily add your cluster and enable the GitOps and enable the policies. So that is really nice. And then second announcement, we now have ASM, Anthos Service Mesh, which is essentially Istio, fully managed experience. So it's really nice because you don't have to really install Istio anymore, and you don't have to manage it, upgrade it. Google will do it for you. So one problem less for you. Just you can take advantage of Istio, but you don't have to manage it. And this is, again, you don't need to pay any like Anthos licenses for that. It's pretty much available with the some specific billing, but like it can available standalone for you if you want to use it. I hope if you have any questions, please ask them. So this is like recap of all GKE announcement. I'm gonna skip some of them, like GKE cost optimization insights. There's for people who likes to use NFS solution, file-based applications. We now have file store enterprise for GKE. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. For the serverless, we have solutions like App Engine, Cloud Functions, but I think one of the most popular solution out there that is recently been introduced by Google is called Cloudrun. Lets you run containers in serverless manner. I have only very few announcements, but like because things are happening a lot during the year. So if you follow the Cloudrun, you probably heard a lot of news. One of the big announcements at the Google Next was that now it supports new CPU allocation controls for Cloudrun. So before your application, they were running in a serverless manner. You can actually, they were essentially were running when you're serving traffic, and they were scaled down to 0. But you have some application that you want to run all the time, right? And for that, we have this new option, which is you can allocate some CPU to your application, and it's going to be always running on the Cloudrun without scaling down to 0. I'm going to keep the App Engine and Cloud Functions just in a slide here. I will skip to the next because we have another cool part in terms of announcement in the DevOps area. So you're probably already familiar with Cloud Build and Artifact Registry, which came to replace a Google Container Registry. But we have a new solution, which is I'm going to cover now. So when you do the CI/CD in Google, you would use something like Cloud Code. Maybe as a developer, you create your code, and then you will store it in a GitHub, and then the Cloud Build will kick in to do your CI part and continuous delivery maybe, and then it's going to store your containers in the Artifact Registry. But we had a kind of a gap in the space how I can actually do continuous deployment. Things like Spinnaker are very difficult to deploy and manage. So we had a lot of customers asking, can we have a solution that managed by Google and simple to use and opinionated? And that's where we have Cloud Deploy, which is a new solution that has been announced at Google Next. And it's essentially managed continuous delivery for Google Kubernetes Engine and for Anthos as well. And it allows you to centralize your deployment practice and management. You can have things like promotion from dev staging to production. You can have things like approvals. You can have deployment metrics. So I just have an example here of the UI. So you can see I'm promoting here from test, staging to production, and I have different deployment frequency. So you can see how fast you're delivering your software. So this is really cool. And we actually have in December, we're going to have a whole session around Cloud Deploy with demos. So if you're interested around that, please join us. So that's essentially a new way. So Cloud Build now, you can store your artifacts in the artifact registry, and Cloud Deploy will actually deploy it to Cloudrun, Kubernetes, or your Anthos clusters. So that was Cloud Deploy. Cloud Build Hybrid essentially allows you to not only do CI on GCP, but you can also enable it on your premises. So you can have a use case where, let's say, you have your CI, maybe your code on-prem, and you want to actually use Cloud to build your Docker images and store them in a, let's say, Google Cloud. So that's where you can use this mode where you have a fully managed cloud build that can work with your application that's running on-prem, for example. And then artifact registry, some of the announcements up there. So that's it for my part. If you have any questions I can answer now, or I can answer them while Audrina is going to present her part.
Cool. All right, I'll share again and go back in present mode. All right, thanks, Archie, and welcome, Audrina.
Thanks, Stacy. Hey, everyone. So I'm Audrina. I'm a machine learning specialist at Google Cloud, where I work on developing cloud-native machine learning and AI solutions. So my background personally is predominantly in academia, where I did research in the development of new ML algorithms to address a variety of challenges in big data. So happy to be on the call here today, and thanks for having me. So next slide, please, Stacy. Yeah, so this year at Next on the AI ML front, we shared several new announcements across ease of deployment and implementation, and also conversational AI and document AI. And so the first top announcement pertains to Vertex AI. So we launched Vertex AI in May this year, and Vertex is basically a unified interface and infrastructure for the end-to-end machine learning workflow. So you have a single UI, one tab in the GCP console for interacting with all of the platform's component products. So for example, manage data sets, model training, endpoint deployment, etc. And so this year at Next, we took this a step further with the preview launch of Vertex AI Workbench, which is a single unified development environment for the entire data science workflow. So you can now build and train models 5 times faster on Vertex compared to traditional notebooks. And this is primarily enabled by native integrations across data services, which significantly reduces context switching. So to elaborate on that point a bit more, the Vertex Workbench provides managed notebook instances in preview now, which are Google managed environments with various integrations and features that help you set up and work in an end-to-end notebook-based production environment. So a couple of key features to highlight for the new managed notebooks. One, in terms of hardware, in a managed notebook instance, your Jupyter Lab interface is now where you're going to be determining what compute resources, for example, how many virtual CPUs or GPUs or how much RAM your code will run on, and also what framework you want to run your code in. So what that means is you can now write your code first and then choose how to run it without ever having to leave the Jupyter Lab or restart your instance. So this makes it really easy to scale your hardware down for doing some quick testing and then just scaling it back up again when you need to run your code on more data. And then also in terms of data access, you can now access your data directly in the Jupyter Lab interface without leaving it. So now if you go to manage notebooks, you'll see in the left-hand sidebar that you have a cloud storage extension to browse data and other files that you have access to there. And you'll also see a BigQuery extension to be able to browse tables that you have access to in BigQuery to write queries, preview some results, and load that data directly into your notebook as well. And then another new functionality that is in preview is the notebook executor for managed notebooks. So basically with that, you can set up a notebook to run on a recurring schedule. So even while your instance is shut down, the Vertex Workbench will run that notebook file and then save the results for you automatically so that you can look at them after and share those results with others. And then lastly, to help manage costs, you can also set your managed notebook instance to shut down after being idle for a specific period of time. So there are really many new benefits with the managed notebook experience now in the Vertex Workbench, and we're always continuously working on optimizing Vertex AI even more. So next slide, please, Stacy. So the second top announcement pertains to better document understanding. And to start with a little bit of context here, as we know today, most organizations have billions of documents and therefore need a way to automate processing and to collate documents from multiple content sources into a centralized system. And so the document processing problem itself is, of course, not a new one. There are a variety of classical legacy solutions that have been in development for decades to try to capture structured data from digital documents, such as optical character recognition, template-based extraction, etc. However, the problem with these individual solutions is that they cannot fully address what we're trying to solve in the majority of business workflows. In that, for example, we still have to deal with pre and post-processing rules and template-based management, which are all still processes that involve a great deal of human intervention. And so the reason why this remains a challenge today is because being able to actually understand the content of a document is different from simply reading it at a syntactic level. And so therefore, document understanding versus just simple document processing is still a very challenging task and one that is non-trivial to automate. And so basically to address this challenge, we created Document AI, which we first announced in April 2019. And Document AI is a document understanding solution that basically takes your unstructured data, like documents and forms, and then uses machine learning to make that data easier to understand, analyze, and consume by providing structure through content classification, entity extraction, various advanced searching methods, and other functionalities as well. So essentially at a high level, the way that we are able to achieve high consistency and accuracy in our Doc AI solution is through the use of what we call specialized parsers, which are basically just machine learning models that are designed for specific document types. And we're actively working on growing this library of parsers to be able to accommodate all of the most commonly used business document types. And so that's what brings us to the latest addition in our specialized parser portfolio, which is Contract Doc AI, which is now in preview. So we often consider contracts to be one of the most important and complicated documents of all. And now with Contract Doc AI, you can extract insights from the unstructured text in contracts, helping to accelerate contract life cycles and also reduce the cost of contract processing. And so here there are basically two key features to emphasize in this solution. The first being the use of the Google Knowledge Graph for data validation. So here, most of the time, you're going to have a lot of critical information in the document that is either ambiguous or missing, where a human would have to go, search on Google for complementary data. And so basically what we've done is we've integrated that same knowledge graph that powers Google search to enrich entity extraction, such that Google will use the knowledge graph to check for things such as company names, addresses, phone numbers, logos, etc., against those entities on the internet. And that will enable this validation of data and also filling in any missing information. And so the second key feature here is the human in the loop capabilities. So for many business critical workflows, a certain degree of human review is still going to be indispensable. So our human in the loop integration basically provides a simple workflow and UI for humans to review, validate, and correct any low confidence data that gets extracted from these documents. And so the last thing I wanted to note here just about contract.ai is that this initial preview release is just really the core contract module, such that it aims to extract just the core terms that are found across most contracts, regardless of contract type. But contract.ai actually has a very long roadmap ahead where we will cover additional contract modules in the future, targeting specific horizontal and vertical contract types, such as supply chain, corporate finance, insurance, etc. So this initial release is really just the beginning for contract.ai. Next slide, please, Stacy. And so lastly, we have conversational AI. So our contact center AI service combines 4 main components. So there's the conversational core, there's virtual agents, agent assist, and insights, which is now GA. So the conversational core is the AI-powered conversation enabler, which provides a close to human experience through 2 key services predominantly. So one is Google Cloud's speech to text, which is a deep learning neural network API. And so this is what generates that speech response to a customer. And then secondly, you have Dialogflow, which is a platform that uses Google's state-of-the-art research of natural language understanding to identify the intent of a customer and then determine the appropriate next steps. So this core is really what enables that consistent high-quality conversational experience across various channels and platforms, both human and virtual. But the component that we highlighted at Next is what actually happens post-conversation. So this is where contact center AI Insights comes in. And Insights basically provides out-of-the-box and custom modeling techniques to make it easier for contact center teams to better understand customer interaction data. And so it provides 2 key features, the first being topic modeling. So what we want to be able to do is taking that ingested conversational data and then organizing it into the various topics that customers are contacting us about. And today this is done in a few different ways. For example, having the human agent manually annotate what the topic of the conversation is, or perhaps having an analyst reanalyzing old conversation transcripts, or using, say, a rule-based system to associate keywords with topics. But these are all non-optimal solutions. And so this is where topic modeling can prevail, since it's creating a custom model for your specific data to identify the primary topics in order to provide a consistent view of what customers are looking for. So topic modeling basically enables us to understand the conversation as a whole. The next feature addresses how do we better understand the individual utterances in a conversation. So that is the conversation analysis component of Insights. And so basically what that will do is it will break down the conversation and enrich it with annotations that help to search, filter, and find critical data. So this feature of Insights will basically look at every utterance and provide annotations around things like caller and agent sentiment, extraction of common entities such as places, organizations, etc. And then beyond this, Insights also provides highlights for your conversations, which essentially combine the best of semantic searching, keyword and phrase matching, and various rules to highlight the most important parts of a conversation. So there's a lot of really powerful functionality here that can potentially bring a great deal of potential business value. And so thank you. That's all for me. I'm gonna hand it back to Stacy for database and analytics now.
Oh, thanks, Audrina. That was great. Actually, I've asked a question, so I'm not gonna ask it here because we're strapped for time. I asked it in the Q&A, so have a look. See if my question actually makes sense. Cool. So Rogerio, it's your turn. You've been dying to talk for the last 40 minutes. We're doing 53 minutes, so I'll hand it over to you, and we'll cover database and analytics.
No, that's fine, Stacy. I always enjoy listening to Archie and Audrina, so that's all good. So hi, everyone. My name is Rogerio. I am a data platform specialist at Google. And my primary mission at Google is to help customers migrate and manage their database workloads on Google Cloud. So we had a lot of announcements at Next 21 as it relates to our data platform. We would need a lot of time to cover everything, but I think I've selected the best ones for this audience here. So the first one is Serverless Spark, which is really the first service of this kind in the industry. So for those familiar with the Spark, it is a fantastic solution for data processing and transformation, but it can be fairly complex to manage. There's a lot of moving parts, and we have had Dataproc for quite some time now to address this kind of issue to some extent. So Dataproc provides Spark capabilities on a fully managed infrastructure. For example, you would be able to deploy the infrastructure minutes, you can scale up and down as needed, and really it simplifies the entire operational process of hosting Spark. However, behind the scenes, the Spark infrastructure still runs on VMs, right, on Dataproc. So we don't have to manage the VMs, but it's still there. Now, the idea about the serverless Spark service is to take the service to a new level and basically do away with the entire infrastructure. Right, so it basically means you can run Spark workloads without a single piece of hardware software to maintain. So imagine, for example, as a Spark developer, you would be able to run PySpark code directly on BigQuery without having to provision anything beforehand. So really, as a developer, you would not have to worry about any of the infrastructure running in the background. So you just need to write your code and off you go. Next slide, Stacy, please. So the next one is Postgres interface for Spanner. For those who are not familiar with Spanner at this point, I would encourage you to learn a little bit about it. This is a fully relational database on GCP with horizontal scalability and 5 nines SLA. So with one database solution, you can have both scalability as well as high availability all combined, right? So this is pretty hard to achieve with traditional databases. Now, as powerful as a Spanner is, until now, you would have to use its own interface to communicate and to perform your functions with Spanner, which is really simple enough to use. But we wanted to give organizations and developers the ability to maximize their skill sets and investments made in Postgres, which is really one of the most popular databases out there, if not the most popular. So this new interface would allow developers to leverage the Spanner capabilities, but still make the most of the knowledge that you already have on Postgres. So for example, it provides support for many of the core subset features of Postgres, things such as the DLs, DQLs, DMLs, along with many SQL data types, functions, and operators. And those functions, those features have been extended with Spanner-like Spanner-specific features, things such as stable interleaving and query hints, for example. The other thing it does is allows you to use the PG adapter to support use cases using the popular PSQL in Postgres. So you just use the PG adapter to connect to Spanner and just run the code or the functions in PSQL as if it were in Postgres. And the other thing about the Postgres interface with Spanner is that it's available at no additional charge, right? So it's included with the Spanner solution by default. Next slide, please. BigQuery Omni. So I'm confident that most GCP developers nowadays are familiar with BigQuery and its immense scalability potential. It's always amazing to me. However, most companies are adopting multi-clouds today, right? And they may have data across multiple cloud providers today. And that frequently creates data silos that make it difficult, if not even impossible, for developers to access and leverage all that data across the multiple platforms. So BigQuery Omni is intended to be a flexible cross-cloud analytics solution that would let you cost-effectively access and analyze all the data across GCP, AWS, Azure, all in a secure manner. So what does that mean for you as a developer? So let's imagine that you have data stored in a data center on GCP, and you have data on AWS or Azure. So when you log in into BigQuery, you will see all of that data available in a single interface, right? So you could access and use the data on AWS along with Azure, without having to move anything to GCP. So, and that would save you from egress charges that are typically charged by AWS or Azure. This is also very useful in situations where you simply cannot move the data, maybe because of data residency issues or constraints, but you would still like to use the data in a different data center. Next slide, please. So the last one I selected for this audience is Dataplex. So there's one common saying or stat that I always like to bring it up, is that about 75% of all the data in an organization is what they called dark data, meaning it is data that's not used for anything. And one of the main reasons for that is because simply nobody knows that it's there in the first place, or maybe nobody knows what the data represents. I personally can definitely relate to that issue. I've worked several years in large banks, and the amount of data that they have in those places is just staggering. But much of that data is not used for anything, and perhaps never will be, just because people don't know what it is, don't know what they mean, etc. So, for example, as a developer, you may need to have access to data sets for a given application that you're writing. But how would you go about finding out if the organization has the data sets available and in the first place? And if it does, is the data sets usable? What is the metadata for the data, right? So just having the data is one thing, but you also need to know how to access and use that data. That's the metadata part of it. And would you have access to it? So Dataplex, which was released in GA at Next 21, is designed to address exactly that use case. So the idea here is to discover, organize, and make all the data available under the same integrated analytics experience. So in addition, Dataplex, you can apply a data quality service to ensure that data is good to be used. And you can also define a common security model across the entire data sets that you have, whatever the data is. So just so I'm clear, this is beyond a simple metadata service, right? We have had a good metadata service for a while called Data Catalog. Dataplex is really, it can provide the data fabric and the data governance solution needed for all the data in the organization. Next slide, please. So that's all I had for this section. I hope it's been useful. I wish I had more time to talk about some of the other cool stuff, but I would encourage you to visit the Next 21 website and check out the other sessions. Every session, including some hands-on demonstrations, is available free of charge. So with that, I'll pass it back to you, Stacy.
Thanks, Rogerio. It was really cool. And like I've mentioned earlier on when we were chatting before we started, I'm going to ping you back to do a data and analytics only event. So we'll definitely see you again in 2022. we have something for the next 2 months, but definitely we want to cover that topic in more details. And having myself and Archie not speaking gives you way more time. So, so again, thanks everyone for joining. Rogerio, again, thank you. Archie, thanks. Audrina, thank you for participating. For the people who are still there, I've also posted a question in Q&A, so I'm the only one who has actually asked questions. So if you, I just if we can go there. So the just to wrap up quickly, there's future events coming. I've mentioned that way early before we started. November 17th, we have a security in GCP. So I will have Yann Belrose from Google Montreal security specialist.
From our team. He's actually from our team.
I'm just going fishing in your team and just like getting people out. So he's gonna cover the security piece, and on December 16th we're gonna cover CI/CD. Actually, like the slide that Archie mentioned, showed where we're going from code to cloud build to cloud deploy. Like we'll actually cover that through a full session, and the speaker is gonna be Mr. Sanders. Forgot his first name.
It's Dave Sanders from my team.
Dave Sanders
from our team too. So like exactly. We have everyone from our team eventually.
Keep them coming. So we'll cover this. And again, like feel free to join us on Slack. There's a you can register. Leverage the tiny URL. You can go to GDG Montreal Slack.com. Register. There's a public channel there. You can join us, join the conversation. So it's a great way if you have questions, just as a community. People can actually answer you. And just for those who are still there, and we probably mostly have like everybody, which is nice. Thanks for sticking around. We always have a little survey at the end of every meetup. So if you have your phone, you have the QR code, actually works. Or the URL for like tinyurl.com/GDG Cloud Montreal Q4. And just fill up is giving us an idea of like the other topics we could cover, things you would like maybe us to focus on more, or actually like also, and then we've pasted that at the beginning and Archie pasted it in general. There's a section if you want to actually speak during the if you want to present something, and we would love to have you. You just submit a like on PaperCal. There's call for papers. Just submit. We'll get notification and go through it, and you can have roughly like 35-40 minutes when we do single topic events, and then you can present to everybody. For now we're still online, and we'll come back with a hopefully in real life every quarter in Montreal. But for the moment, that covers everything. So I want to again thanks everybody for joining us. It was really
thanks,
great.
Roger and Adrina, joining on your time. And I mean, we can probably stop recording, right? But like, I think if people want to ask questions, maybe some people not comfortable, like maybe we can have 5 more minutes just to answer anything.
I have no problem with that. Like question wise, they're still just my 2 questions. But if people actually have other questions than mine, it's fine. And I personally, I don't mind keeping the recording going if it actually helps people. But just let us know.
Maybe people are shy.
Maybe
to ask.
they're so I'm gonna stop the recording then. Okay, so stop. It's official.